history. Let's talk about them hills. Let's talk about the gold might be waiting for me there. Let's talk about the dogwoods and Appalachian hills. Let's talk about the gold might be waiting for me there. Have everybody's attention, please. I'd like to introduce Miss Cassie to the podcast. Y'all gather around now.
Hey there, Lennie. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Cassie. How you doing?
I'm good. I love being in Raleigh, and this is a beautiful place that you guys have hooked us up with today.
Yeah, no, it's a nice location right downtown. You can see all the construction going on. Raleigh's growing.
Raleigh is growing. See, that makes me sad. So you are the vice chair of the North Carolina Forward Party.
Correct.
Correct. How did you get yourself in that position?
So in North Carolina, 40% are registered independents. And those that are still tied to one of the two major parties often don't feel like those parties are representing them because they're too taken over by the extremes. So when I was in North Carolina, I've been here since 2004. I was looking for a way to join a party that represented the middle part of this country, right? The middle 70% of North Carolina. I've been involved in something called instant runoffs for several years now, trying to get instant runoffs in North Carolina, and got connected with the chair of the Forward Party, Pat Newton, and we had lots of conversations, and he asked me to help join and help grow the Forward Party, so I joined.
Can you tell me about the Forward Party? Because I have actually had interactions with y'all before. You actually, Josh came to Raleigh several months ago, and I was advocating for stronger laws against stalking and harassment here in North Carolina, and he got involved, and that's how we met, and that's how we ended up here today, actually.
Got it. That's great. I'm glad you did.
How did the party come to be overall? Because the minute that I was like, I'm going to Raleigh and I'm talking to the Forward Party, people came in my comments and they were like, they're leftists, don't fall for it. And I was like, well, I know Josh, and I don't think that he's a leftist. So can you tell me, like, how was the actual party itself formed, and what are y'all's stances?
Yeah, great question. So on a national level, the Forward Party was formed by the combination of two organizations, one led by Andrew Yang, who ran for Democratic president, and the other was a former Republican New Jersey governor, Todd Whitman. So I'm from Jersey, she was my governor there. So they looked out at the national scene and said, this is crazy. Neither major party is representing the vast majority of people in America. We need a third choice. We need a strong centrist organization. So they combined their two organizations to form the Forward Party. Now, each state has their own representation. So we are the North Carolina Forward Party, which means we are focused on doing what is right for North Carolina. We don't really get involved in national politics. That's not what we're here for. We're here to address North Carolina needs. So what does the North Carolina Forward Party stand for? Great question. So we think the system is failing most voters, right? So right now, both political parties, the Republican and the Democratic, they're dominated by their extremes, and we can talk about why that is. There's some reasons for that. Gerrymandering is a big one, right? And gerrymandering is not a Republican Party problem. It's not a Democratic Party problem. It's a problem for the party that's in power wanting to stay in power. So before 2010, before the Republicans won the majority in the state legislature, the Democrats gerrymandered the heck out of the state. The district didn't make any sense. When they were in power, they wanted to organize the district so they stay in power. Now the Republicans are doing it in North Carolina, and that's unfortunate because what they're trying to do is take the will of the voters away and concentrate it into the party power. So we want to change that, and you can only change that by changing the incentives. So one of the big things the Forward Party talks about is changing the incentives of our elections, changing the incentives for our politicians. Talked about gerrymandering. Another great thing to do would be term limits. Vast majority of voters support term limits. You should not be able to make a career out of being a politician. Being a politician is about serving your community. Why are people there for 15, 18, 20 years? So let's institute term limits. It's a simple thing. The Democrats didn't do it when they were in power. The Republicans aren't doing it when they're in power. We have it as part of our platform. We will do it when we get elected. And then the last thing, in North Carolina, we talked about how the parties are led by their extremes. So in a North Carolina primary, Democratic or Republican, what percent of the votes do you need to win your primary?
I have no idea.
30%. So you can win a North Carolina primary with 30%. if you have a general election, so in 2024, when you had the general election, right? Of the people who voted in the general election, something like 10 to 15% of them will only vote in the primary, right? So if you have 100 people that normally vote in the presidential election, 10 to 15 are voting in a primary. So of those 10 or 15, only 30% of those pick your electorate. So therefore, the leaders of the party, they're just going for that small fraction, that 30% of a very small number of voters. That makes no sense. So you're a fraction of a fraction. So the people actually picking the primary winner is a small sliver of voters. Why do we do that? Let's make the requirement in a primary to be 50%, right? You have to win a majority of your primary to move forward. And there's ways we can do that, something that I'm a big advocate for, called instant runoffs. Because if you don't have instant runoffs, then you might have a traditional runoff election, which costs a lot of money, extends the entire time of the primary, and there's no need. But those are some of the election reforms that we would push so that you have elected officials that really care about the voters. No more gerrymandering, term limits, and require 50% majority to win a primary. Now, on more granular level of what we would do if we could wave a magic wand, we're really big into education, and education that requires good outcomes. So have you heard of the Mississippi Miracle?
I haven't.
So the Mississippi Miracle, so for years, Mississippi was considered a laggard in education. They've made incredible strides, like absolutely off the charts incredible strides. And it's not because they've given more money into education, it's because they've made outcomes a requirement. Starting in 3rd grade in Mississippi, you have to be able to pass, and don't quote me on everything, but certainly math and reading, right? So you have to be able to be proficient in 3rd grade to move to 4th grade. And because of that, the students, the parents of the students really want their children to do well, and they really want their children to pass. So because of that, the education level, the reading and writing in Mississippi has gained tremendously. Why aren't we doing that in North Carolina? Why aren't we requiring good skills?
Don't we have some, so I want to say that there's a law here in North Carolina where in 5th grade, you have to pass your multiplication test, and you have to, I can't remember what the reading requirement is, and you're also, it's law that you have to teach cursive. And I've heard that these things aren't being done.
So then how are they law if they're not being done?
That's a good question.
So in North Carolina, we're about middle of the pack, right? And this is a great state. It's one of the best business states in the country. It's a growing state. There's no reason why we're middle of the pack. We should be one of the leading states in education. So that's something the Forward Party will really focus on. So education one, but focus on outcomes. Not just how much money we give per student, not just how many kids graduate, because you can graduate, and if you graduate and can't read or do math, what's your degree worth? So really focused on quality outcomes to prepare our students for the workforce.
Does this platform mean removing some of the social justice things that are currently being taught in schools?
So that's a great question. That's not where our focus is. So you'd have to tell me specifically about what you mean about social justice and what they're trying to push.
There's a lot of allegations that in North Carolina schools and American schools, period, that teachers are focused more on gender theory, on race theory, on all these different things rather than core education.
I can say emphatically that the Forward Party is focused on core education. Right? So I'm a small business person, an entrepreneur. When I go to hire someone, I'm looking for skills, right? And those skills are going to be your ability to communicate, your ability to think about complex issues, your ability to do math, use Excel, those type of things. That's the education that I want to see getting educated to our students so that when I go to hire someone, they have those skills. That's what I'm focused on. We're not focused on anything besides the core academic principles.
So merit-based, I love that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. I feel like I actually spoke to Rob Yates earlier, and we went back and forth, and he was picking on me because he said that I've become a little more conservative, and I'm like, yeah, well, whenever you go viral and all of a sudden people are, sending you death threats, that'll make you a little more afraid of, more conservative, a little more afraid of those types of people who think that it's okay to do that. Which kind of gave me pause whenever I was on the way here, and people were like, no, they're leftist. I was like, I'm not sure that's right. It makes me happy to hear that. I love that. You were talking about how you guys want to change the electoral process. And so I want to make sure that I got this right. What you're talking about, you're not talking about something that would lead to what you see in Germany or in Canada, where somebody who gets like 6% of the vote suddenly wins because they have 10 different or 11 or more different parties.
I want the opposite. I
Okay.
want someone to have 50% of the vote.
Right.
So right now, North Carolina, in a primary, Democrat, Republican, it happens all the time, you can win with 30% of the vote, right? So I want to make that 50%. So I'm a big proponent of instant runoffs, and we can get into the weeds of instant runoffs, but where there's issues with our current elections, right? So let's say that there's 3 candidates running: a Democrat, a forward party candidate, and a Republican. And it doesn't have to be a forward party candidate, called a libertarian candidate, whatever candidate that you feel aligns somewhat with you. And you go to an election, you have to choose. Let's just say in your case that you really, really like the independent, the libertarian or independent, but if you vote for them, you're afraid that means you're not voting for a Republican candidate who's your second choice, and therefore your vote's going to get wasted. Have you ever heard that?
Yeah.
So people are worried about a spoiler effect. I'm just going to waste my vote if I vote for the libertarian or the independent. So instant runoffs eliminates that. So instant runoffs, you get to vote for your number 1 choice and your number 2 choice, and if you want, a number 3 choice, right? And the way the election happens is they count all the votes, right? And so I'm giving you kind of a broad picture of a general. They count all the votes, and if no one of those 3 get 50%, you go to an instant runoff. An instant runoff means the candidate with the least amount of votes drops out. Let's just say, for argument's sake, that's the libertarian independent candidate. They drop out. Then the vote happens automatically again. In a real runoff election, what would happen is the independent drops out, the Democrat and Republican are still running, and then people go back to the ballot and they vote again, right? If you voted the first time for the libertarian, but your backup was a Republican, who would you vote for in the runoff? You'd go for the Republican.
Right.
So in instant runoffs, you vote for the libertarian, your second choice is Republican. If nobody gets 50%, one candidate drops out, all the voting is counted again, your second choice gets elevated, and now your vote goes to the Republican. No votes are wasted. And that is exactly how real runoffs go. This is an instant runoff. You don't have to waste more time. You don't have to waste more money on continuing to run elections. And no wasted votes, and you get a 50% winner.
So I'm wondering, would this help alleviate, like right now, I want to say that the race between Cooper and Whatley is supposed to be one of the most expensive in North Carolina history, if not the most expensive. Would a runoff fix that? Where you're talking about all this money just getting wasted on a political race?
Interesting. So if we're going to use that example, let's assume that we have a strong third party candidate, an independent, libertarian, whatever you want, right? That's representing the 40% of independents in North Carolina, okay? We don't have this situation now because we don't have instant runoffs, but let's say we did, okay? You have Cooper, you have Whatley, and you have a strong independent candidate that's pulling really strongly for the 40% of independents, okay? What would happen in that election is that Cooper would have to say, okay, I might not be the number 1 choice of independents. Cooper and Whatley would say this. I might not be the number 1 choice of the independents, but I want to be their second choice, because if the independent doesn't get 50% and he or she is the person that drops out, I want to be their second choice. So what does that mean from campaigning? That means you can't just campaign for your base and hope you get your base out. You have to campaign for your base and for those independents that might vote Republican, might vote Democrat. So you're going to be appealing to them as well. So no longer are you just focusing on a Democratic Party line or just on the Republican Party line. You're thinking, I need to get 50%. I need to be the second choice for those that are voting for this third party candidate. So I want to appeal to more people. That's what it would help. In the primaries, which is I think where I would prefer to start, I'm less concerned about the general as the primaries. Again, in North Carolina, in a primary, you can win with 30%. So what that means is, whether Republican or Democrat, they are just focused on a very small sliver of their base. Let's have instant runoff in the primaries. Let's require that you've got to have 50% of the vote or more. Again, that means if you're a Democrat or Republican, you're going for a broader swath of your electorate, not just the 30% most extreme, the ones that are most fired up. You need 50% of the Democratic voters in the primary or 50% of the Republican voters in the primary. That would moderate a lot of what our politicians are doing and force them to work more for centrist goals, which is what our goals are.
I've heard theories that this could make our elections kinder.
So that's a great comment. That's exactly right, right? So right now, because you're just trying to fire up your base, politicians are not necessarily talking about what they want to do. They're just telling you how bad the other person is. Well, you're not going to vote for me. You're really going to vote for that person or that. Let me tell you how bad they are instead of let me tell you how good I am, right? So if you're trying to get a broader swath of people, and if you're trying to be someone's second choice, not only focus on your first choice, but other second choice, say, look, I might not agree with Cassie on everything, but we're both reasonable. And let me tell you where I agree with Cassie, right? So if you vote for Cassie as your number one choice, but she doesn't move on, consider me as your second choice, because we do align here. Yes, we're not perfectly aligned. We're gonna have differences, but let me tell you where we're similar instead of our current politics, which is, let me tell you how bad Cassie is. Let me get fired up on social media. Let me pull one little thing she said here and one little thing she said there to make her sound like something she's not. So yes, it would change the dynamic of elections. And it has. There's lots of documentation on that.
Yeah, that happens to me a lot. And I'm guilty too. I mean, because just earlier today, I told somebody I would vote for a fence post before I would vote for Roy Cooper, but I have excellent reasons for that. And that's the way that he's treated the North Carolinian people since he got in office, you know? I mean, there's a good reason for that. But I also, like everybody else, get sick of the mudslinging that goes on. It's constant. I mean, and now it's bled over into our everyday lives.
There's no question. Social media makes things worse. Everybody's a tough guy in social media, right? But let's talk about what you just said. So you're not going to vote for Cooper. Put it aside. But you have to make a choice on the Republican side. And Whatley or Brown can win with 30% of the Republican vote in a primary. Why is that? Wouldn't you want one of them to have to win with 50% to appeal to the broadest swath of Republican voters? Doesn't that make sense? And if they do that, then they're probably going to have a better chance in the general versus a Cooper.
Yeah.
Right?
See, people get upset with me because I support Brown personally. That's my choice. I like Brown. I've met him multiple times. I think he's a great guy. I love that he's willing to travel the state and actually talk to people about his stances. But if he loses, I'm going to vote for Whatley. It's going to happen, you know? I mean, because I'm not going to vote for Cooper, you know? So I think that a runoff would make that interesting.
I think it would be great. And what it would force is both Brown and Whatley not to worry about kind of those that are already locked in, right? So it would force Whatley to appeal more to you. I get that Brown's your first choice, but let me tell you why you should be very confident in me if I win the primary, right? And others that are running in that primary, so you're going to have people that are going to have that same choice, right? So you have Brown, you have Whatley, but you have others running, right? And others are going to have to look at that and say, am I going to throw my vote away if I vote for anyone but Brown or Whatley? If I vote for this person, does that mean I'm really helping Brown or helping Whatley? Give them the choice to rank their votes. This is my first choice, and if that person doesn't win 50%, then I'd support Whatley or I'd support Brown. Let the Republican primary fight for the vast majority of Republicans, not just that 30%. That's what instant runoffs would do.
I like that a lot. I think that that's smart. I'm actually impressed. I didn't know if there was going to be anything we would agree on. I like that.
Great. I think we'll agree on a lot.
Oh, so question, and I'm not sure where this falls into that, but have you seen the thing with Kate Barr?
Very little bit. So I can't speak intelligently on it, but I've seen some of the clips where she said she's not really a Republican. Even
Right. So she goes on some podcasts. She basically says, I'm a Democrat and I'm running as a Republican because that's where the fight is. And immediately I'm offended because you're insulting your base's intelligence. You're trying to pull the wool over people's eyes. There's no ethics in that. It's dishonest. It's corrupt. And so I'm wondering, would what you're proposing, would that fix that kind of issue where we wouldn't have to worry about people, you know, pretending to be on the other team to run in a primary just for power?
Yeah, so I don't know the history of her, so I don't want to talk about her. But in instant runoffs, right? So I'll give you another example. if you know that a candidate only needs 30% to win, right? And let's say on the left or right, so I don't want to pick sides, let's say that there's an extreme candidate that if they win are likely going to lose the general, right? Let's say that there's a candidate running against Cooper in the primary. That's an extreme candidate that if that candidate, he or she beats Cooper in the general, whether they're running against Whatley or Brown, 100% going to lose, right? There's an incentive for, and Republicans aren't doing this, but this has been done in politics. There's an incentive for Republicans to bankroll that extreme candidate in the Democratic Party to help them win, help them get that 30%, because they'll lose in the general. And this actually, the Democrats did do this. They did do this with Republican candidates in 2024. Democratic Party, and I'm not making this up, people can look it up, supported extreme Republican candidates because they thought it would give them a better chance in the general or allow them to campaign against them. So stuff like that is disgusting.
Did that happen here?
The knowledge that I have is not based here.
Okay.
But look it up. I can't give you quotes and all that, but look it up. This is not something I'm kind of pulling out of thin air. Yeah, so they supported extreme Republicans because they thought they'd have a better chance to win in a general, right? Because if you only need 30% of the vote or a small fraction of the vote, you have a higher likelihood of success doing that. But if people got to win 50% coming out of the primary, that's much harder, right? Because now you're going to have to convince 50% of the entire Republican Party or 50% of the entire Democratic Party voting in the primary that this candidate makes sense. And you're less likely to get the extremes. You're more likely to get someone who's got a broad breadth of support within their party. So I think it solves a lot.
Are there states who are already doing this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's actually, there's states that are doing it. The Virginia GOP did it to elect Glenn Youngkin, which led him to win the Virginia governorship. So within their party, they used instant runoffs. Glenn Youngkin won, a relatively unknown politically, right? He never ran for politics before this. Glenn Youngkin won, beat a former Democratic governor in Virginia in a state that rarely votes for Republican governors. So that was a great example, right? Utah does it. I think Vermont does it. There's municipalities around the country that do instant runoffs. I believe 16 to 20 million Americans vote via instant runoffs. They allow the US military overseas to vote like that. And here's why. So yeah, in the Southeast, not all the US military, but in the Southeast, if you're overseas, they'll allow you to rank your choice because let's say, great example. Let's say in a national election, right? We won't use any specific names. Candidate 1, 2, and 3 are running, right? And if you're overseas and you got to mail in your vote long before the primaries are done, and you say, I really want this person, by the time that their vote gets counted, that person dropped out of the race. They would have no say. So they allow the US military to rank their candidates so that if someone drops out of the race by the time the vote gets counted, their second or third choice goes. So this is not new. It's been done all over the world. It's done a lot of times just in everyday life, right? So if you and your daughter are trying to pick where to go eat, right? You want pizza, she wants burgers, right? And if you could vote for 3 or 4, whichever one gets 50%, that's how you win.
We're too Southern for that. She gets no choice. I'm paying
Fair
for
enough.
it.
Fair enough. But we make choices like that in everyday life all the time, right? A group of people are going out to eat. Imagine if you could say, okay, here's 5 choices, right? There's no 50%. You want pizza, burgers, wings, whatever.
Yeah.
Whichever one gets the broadest support. That's all instant runoffs are.
Can we go back and go a little deeper into the education?
Sure. So where the Forward Party really focuses, and we talked a little bit about it, is what are the right incentives, right? And a lot of what I've talked about today is about incentives, right? If you don't have term limits, then politicians are incentivized to make a career out of it. Yeah. If you don't have gerrymandering, then politicians, Democrats and Republicans, do it all over the country, are incentivized to draw districts so that they can win as many seats as they can. But that's not what the voters want. So we talk a lot about incentives. If you look at schools and say, well, the students aren't performing well, they must need more money. Well, how does that incentivize the schools to do well? Because it's, well, if the students don't do well, I get more money. Why do we want the students to do well? right? And I'm not saying that people do that, but it's an extreme example. So I'd rather say, let's focus on the schools that drive the best outcomes. And if they're succeeding and they're improving, let's give them more money, right? So we are very focused in education on outcomes. Students that are prepared for today's jobs, students that can read and write and communicate well. So let's focus on that. What schools are doing that the best? And in the South recently, and I talked about the Mississippi Miracle, but so is Alabama and Louisiana. They've done things that I'm not an expert in, but they've done things that have drastically improved the outcomes of their students. We should be learning from them, right? That's the beautiful part of having 50 states and not having everything centralized, is you get to see what different states are doing and doing well. Right? North Carolina should not be in the middle 50 of this country in terms of educating our students.
I got extremely upset when I saw that teachers were begging for more money, and I'm like, I homeschool 2 kids. I know that it can be hard. I know how difficult it can be, but at the same time, my kids excel on end of year tests every year.
I think that's fair, and I think the way I would say, I think your feelings are fair, right? So the way I would look at it is, if we can drive better outcomes, right, and teachers can get paid more and want to be good teachers, and we are paying for the best teachers, and we're paying for teachers that want to do well and want their students to succeed, and we're able to rate teachers based on their successes. I'm all for paying them more. Paying them, and I don't know how we compare to other states, but are we paying our teachers equally to other states, or are we losing teachers because we're not competitive? I'm very supportive of paying our teachers more, but they've got to have great outcomes for our students. And I think that's what you're saying. You'd be happy with it if we're having great outcomes.
Yeah.
But paying more for not great outcomes, that doesn't make anybody happy.
Exactly. Okay, so term limits. I think that you're right. I think that everyone I know, left, right, in between, libertarian, no matter who you are, you want term limits. Why isn't that happening, and what can a third party like the Ford Party do to help us secure that?
Yeah. So a theme you'll hear from me a lot is that those in power want to remain in power.
It's very libertarian of you.
So we've got libertarians as part of our team at the Forward Party. So Democrats talk about term limits when they're not in power. Republicans talk about term limits when they're not in power. But they've both led this state for decades at different times, right? The Republicans have been in power since 2011. Why did they not institute term limits? Because that means they would lose jobs, right? At some point, those that instituted it would be taking a job away from themselves, right? Because they'd have to be out. Democrats had control of North Carolina Congress for decades. Why didn't they put it in? Because if they put in term limits, then the people in charge lose power. We are making that as part of our platform. We're not saying it would be nice. We're saying we're going to do it, right? So if you get a third party in that is banging on the table, we need term limits. Why are you not? Force them to answer why they're not putting in term limits. It's of all the things I mentioned, term limits are the easiest. They really are, right? Gerrymandering is complex. Instant runoff takes a lot of voter education. Term limits, here's the rule. I'll give you a great rule that you can do for term limits. 10 years or 2 terms, the lesser of, right? Or the greater of, however it works out. So you're either out in 10 years, or if it's something like the National Senate, where 2 terms is 12 years, then you get 2 terms. Simple. You don't need much discussion about it. It's not that complicated. You don't need a lot of education around it. Term limits. Those in power don't want to give up power. We want to change the incentives of our politics because we care about doing what's right, not what keeps us in power.
But how do you do it? Like, I can't foresee them voting for this and supporting it. I just don't. So how do you introduce it, and how do you get it past the finish line?
So you get strong candidates of the Forward Party that go out there and say, I'm going to push for term limits when I get in. I'm going to pass legislation, or I'm going to write legislation to try to get term limits passed. Anybody that's running against me, tell me why you're not going to support this. If the voters want me and I'm going to pass term limits, why are you not going to say that you're going to do the same? Or if you want to beat me, you're going to have to sign a pledge that says, if I win as a Democrat or if I win as a Republican, I'm going to support term limits. So there was, I think it's Grover Lundquist, did something really powerful with taxes, right? He not forced, but he used his power and influence to ask Republicans to sign a no tax pledge that they will not vote in Congress to increase taxes. And he is a very powerful political force. So if you sign that pledge and then go against it, he's going to fund people in opposition to you. You're going to have to explain to your voters why you signed something and then went against your word. We would do the same thing in the Forward Party, right? We would ask anyone we're running against, sign the pledge to put in term limits. Sign it. Why won't you sign it? If you beat me, sign the pledge. That's powerful. And then anyone that supports us and sees that either the Republican or Democratic candidate go against that pledge, they're going to have a lot of explaining to do, and they're going to lose a lot of voters.
I was told that y'all are very pro-America and very gun-friendly. And so I'm curious because, once again, there were people who immediately heard the word forward and they thought, extreme leftists, don't do it. But I'm curious, what other stances do y'all have that appeals to conservative voters?
So it's funny when I saw some of your comments on X, because we were at the Dixie Gun and Knife show in January, right? So we had a table there. And we were speaking to a lot of voters, and we got about 40 signatures on our petition to get us on the ballot. And the biggest pushback I got there was, oh, you're just taking voters away from the Republican Party, right? So they're afraid that I'm going to take voters away, that Forward Party is going to take voters away from the Republican Party. Yet people that are following you are telling us that we're just leftists. Which one is it, right? All I ask is that you listen to what our policies are. You listen to what we're trying to do. And our policies are on the North Carolina Forward Party website, clear as day. Strong Second Amendment supporters, right? There's plenty of rules on the books. The only thing we support with Second Amendment is background checks, right? Like, background checks are important.
I'm libertarian on that, I guess. I'm very pro-gun. I think everyone should have a gun unless you have, a criminal background. If you have a criminal background, I could draw the line at that.
But how would you know if they have a criminal background if you don't do a background check?
Well, I mean, if you've been in jail, you shouldn't be able to buy a gun.
But you need a background check.
Good point.
So that's it. That's our biggest thing, is we think you need background checks, right? Yeah. But other than that, personally, and I don't speak for everybody in the Forward Party, I can only speak for me, my family owns several guns, right? So at the Dixie Gun and Knife Show, which we've gone many times as a family, and we'll go again as the Forward Party in May, we probably own 5 or 6 guns within our family. At that Dixie Gun and Knife Show, I bought my wife a shotgun because that's what she wanted. We're pro-Second Amendment. We are pro-Second Amendment. Right?
I love that. Yeah, I am very pro-Second Amendment. I'm actually pro-constitutional carry. So now I need to rethink that. So maybe I don't think that we need background checks.
And again, so how far apart are we, right? The Forward Party is a strong supporter of background checks. We think that's important, right? But we're not that far. If you don't support background checks, are we miles and miles away?
Yeah, no. I think for me, because I have diagnosed PTSD, it's something I've lived with for years, I know that can be a holdup on me getting concealed carry. And I don't think that that's right. I don't think that that's fair. I think that a lot of people try to vilify mental illness because they don't really understand what it looks like. And so they're like, oh, this is a mental health issue. And I'm like, no, it's an evil issue. Because here I am, I've lived with PTSD for 20 years and I've never shot anyone, never hurt anyone ever. I would never do that. I would defend myself, but I would not cause harm to another person. And yet people will tell you, oh, this person had PTSD. That's why it happened. No, that's not why it happened,
Yeah, so that's the implementation part of it, right? And implementation is hard. Like, people love making quick judgments and quick decisions, but implementation is hard, right? So I understand exactly where you're coming from.
So what about from the other side of things? Y'all don't be in my comments being mean to me. What stances do you have that you think appeal to the Democrat Party?
Lots. So we talk about election reform, right? We talk about voting. We want to make voting safe, right? So North Carolina, you got voter ID. Great, keep it, no issues. But we should not be restricting when people can vote, right? I'd like to have more opportunities for people to vote. Early voting is great. Find a way to allow mail-in voting with voter ID, right? So those are things that we don't want to shrink the amount of legal voters, right? So from the Forward Party standpoint, we want to have early voting. We want to make it easy for people to vote with a voter ID, right? So I think that's something that is not just for Democrats. I think that's, again, middle 70%. Most of this country, forget what's on X, forget what's on social media. Most of this country really is in that 70%, right? Most people are not the extremes.
People say that that nobody interferes in our elections, and our elections are 100% safe and free, and I'm not sure that I believe that. Maybe I've been hanging out with libertarians too much, so I'm a little bit of a conspiracy theorist, but I'm not sure that I have faith in our elections anymore. And so if people were going in voting, I don't think I would have a problem with that. If you wanted to leave it extended for however long, no problem. But I think I have a problem with people just being able to drop something in the mail and it being like, oh, okay, this is all good. Well, is it? I don't know if that's always necessarily true.
Okay. So good comments, and I appreciate it, because there's a lot of talk about voter integrity, right? I believe, based on everything I've read, based on the lawsuits that Trump administration brought against the elections, there's been no significant fraud found, right? His own Bill Barr, the Attorney General, the people that ran the elections, they found no significant fraud. Does that mean it's 100%? There's none? Of course there's some, right? There's no question there's some, but not significant enough to change an election. I do want to answer your mail-in ballot, though. I do want to get to that. Sorry, I didn't want to cut you off.
I don't think that it's so bad that it's like flipping elections, but to me, it shouldn't be happening at all. Does that make sense? Like, it's not like I'm like, oh, this is why, Trump or Biden or whoever became president. To me, it's like I look at it and I look at some small elections in our state and I go, I know that this person is not right for their position. I believe that the vast majority of people know that. How did this possibly happen? Well, a very small margin of error there could lead to that when you're talking about locally or within a city. Or do you see what I'm saying? So I feel like that's the one thing, like I said, I have no problem with extending it because I do want the most people to vote possible. I just don't want people to be cheating in order to do it.
I totally get that. And you're not alone in that concern. I think a lot of people in this country have that concern. In North Carolina, again, you need a voter ID to vote, right? And if you did a mail-in ballot with a voter ID, right? So you have to send in your ballot and you have to send in a picture of your North Carolina license that has your North Carolina number on it that can be verified. How is that different?
So there are allegations of people being allowed to vote who shouldn't be able to vote in North Carolina elections. Then we also have, and I can't remember who I spoke to about this. It might have been Matt Mercer. If I'm wrong, I apologize. Where there are people who come here from out of state. They go to school here. They vote in North Carolina elections, and then they vote in Ohio elections or Maine elections, wherever they're from. And so they're double voting, not only here but there. And then they leave. And North Carolinians who are locals are stuck with the policies of somebody who voted here and probably shouldn't have to begin with, and then just left. And we are stuck with their policies.
I don't think you can vote twice. So wherever that came from, and I'm not claiming to be an expert, but I would look strongly into that, right? So North Carolina's got great universities, right? UNC, NC State, WCU, you said you're from Wilmington, UNC Wilmington, ECU, and there's a couple 100,000 students at those universities, and they're living here for 4 years. Should they not be allowed to vote? Vote once, right? You can't, I really don't think they're allowed to vote. If they vote in North Carolina, you can't also vote in Ohio. I'm happy to review that, but I don't think you can. They're residents here for 4 years. I don't have a problem with them voting. So again, I want people that live in this state that are legally allowed to vote to be able to vote, right? I have no problem with voter ID. Like, make it a requirement. You need a valid driver's license to get on a plane. You need it to drive. People that are struggling to get a valid driver's license or a voter ID, there's going to be organizations that support that and can help them. But once you have a valid ID make it easy for people to vote.
I just want to be clear, that was allegations. Like, I'm not saying it's been proven, but there have definitely been allegations of it. I'm not sure where I land on students voting in North Carolina and then leaving. Something just feels, my whole thing is North Carolina culture.
Yeah.
There's nowhere in the world I love more than my state. My family's been here for generations. Anybody who follows me knows, like, I go hard for my state. It rubs me wrong for people to move here for 4 years. Let's say they're here for 3, they vote, and then they leave. And then people who live here every day and have for generations are stuck under those policies. I feel some kind of way about that. But I also see it from your standpoint. If they're here for 4 years and those things are going to be impacting their day-to-day lives, why shouldn't they be able to vote? I see both sides of this. But you know, I'm a North Carolina girl and I go for North Carolina. So if you're going to leave, don't vote here.
So let me tag on to that then. What about the people that move here and for a job and then get a job elsewhere, right? Would their votes?
If I could close the border and build a wall and a moat around North Carolina, I'd do it.
So so fair, and I've seen some of the posts about that. Let me push back on that a little bit, then, right? So you said you're from originally Western North Carolina, right? Or
Yes.
part,
Yeah.
right? Do you think that Western North Carolina could benefit from more jobs?
More jobs? Yes. Now ask me if I think they could benefit from more transplants, because that's not the same thing.
But that's not what I asked. I asked
Okay.
more jobs,
All right.
right? So why is North Carolina such a great state for business? So North Carolina is a great state for business for lots of reasons. One, because it is a fantastic state, right?
Yeah.
Relatively low cost of living if you compare it to California and the Northeast.
Don't move here.
I want you to move here. So low cost of living, beautiful weather. You're in Raleigh, which I love the area. You're 2 hours from the mountains, 2 hours from the ocean, right? It is a great state. So people want to come here. When people come here, especially innovators, people that create jobs, bring jobs, that creates opportunities for people in Western North Carolina, Eastern North Carolina, and we want jobs for people, right? We want we want an environment where people who want to make a better life for themselves can, and you can only do that with jobs and growth. So I'm all for people moving to North Carolina. I'm a transplant, I am, right? So a little side note, I'm from Jersey.
Right.
Did you know the Appalachian Mountains are in Jersey?
I did.
You
You say it wrong.
I grew up in the
It's Appalachian.
I grew up in the Appalachian Mountains in New Jersey.
That's beautiful. I love
Yeah.
it. I did.
Yeah.
I knew that. I actually do some Appalachian only content sometimes because I'm part hillbilly, so you know.
I get it.
I love it. So you're like Yankee hillbilly. That's interesting.
So I grew up on very remote 600 acres in New Jersey. My parents didn't own it. They ran a summer camp for underprivileged kids. We grew up on well water, septic. We backed to a 10-acre lake. Every summer I was in cabins without indoor plumbing, without HVAC, with screen windows. We got a lot more in common than you think.
Perfect. I love that. I still don't want all the transplants here. I'm culturally based, and so you know, my daughters.
You want to keep the culture of North Carolina.
Yeah, my daughters, their accent's different from mine, and it drives me crazy. Or you know, I'll go home to Western North Carolina, and I went to Canton in June, July. I can't remember which month it was, but we went out to eat. We sit down in a small restaurant. It's kind of popular in town, though. Nobody in that restaurant sounded like my grandparents. Not one.
Interesting.
None of them. And I was like, you know, this is why natives feel the way they do. But we're getting off track.
Well, so I'll make you feel good about me as a transplant, right? So I'm from Jersey, came to Duke, played football at Duke. I played football post-Duke, so through the NFL, lived all over the country, right? So my wife and I, going on our 25th year anniversary, by the way, my wife and I lived in Denver, Washington, Chicago, and Cleveland. Lived all over the country. But we moved back to North Carolina because we love this state, right? This is the best place we've lived, right? So we want people that want to come to North Carolina and make North Carolina their home and help it improve and help be part of the North Carolina culture, help North Carolina grow, I'm all for it.
People are always shocked that there's so many transplants who follow me, and I'm like, I don't actually dislike people from other states.
You're
You know
proud
what
of
I
your
mean?
state, and you're proud of the culture.
Right.
That's great.
Yeah. I don't think it's a bad thing.
Not at all.
So we covered what you guys do that attract conservatives and liberals. What about unaffiliated voters?
So that's our core, right? So the big thing with the Forward Party, and I've said it a lot already, is just incentives, right? So the number one thing we lead with is we've got to change politics so that politicians are for the voters, right? So that they have to actually be responsive to the voters. And so anybody that looks around in our politics and sees, why are we mudslinging? Why is it so extreme? Why is it, oh my God, they don't think exactly what I think, like I think, so I'm going to call them every name in the book, right? I'm going to call Republican Nazis and I'm going to call Democrats communists. That's not what this country is. Most of this country is in the middle. So everything the Forward Party is for is about changing the incentives in our politics to represent the middle. Right? So that's what independents want. Independents are independent because they want to vote for the best candidate, whether they're Democratic or Republican. So we will continue to hammer home the changes in election rules, right? And incentives for politicians. You got to have term limits, right? You can't go into politics to be a career politician. Gerrymandering is just ridiculous. It is something that you can do without taking politics into account, without taking race into account, just mathematically based on population density and those things that take all the bias out, right? And then back to instant runoffs. We need to change our politics so you're not incentivized to yell the loudest. You're incentivized to find compromise. And I think that's what independents want. I think that's what most Democrats and most Republicans want. They want people back in the day, people used to be excited to reach across the aisle, right? Reagan and Tip O'Neill, Newt Gingrich and Bill Clinton. How do I find ways to make it work? We're not going to be lockstep on everything, but there's a middle ground. Compromise is now considered a dirty word. That's crazy. That's what we want.
Our country was founded on it.
Absolutely. The Constitution was created to create debate, to force people to come to a middle ground. That's what the Forward Party is.
Don't get me wrong, like I said earlier, there are things that I am hardcore conservative on, but then there are things that I'm really not. I mean, when it comes to medical marijuana, I just made a post about this yesterday that did really well. I have PTSD. Of course, I support medical marijuana. I don't even know if I could take it, but that small chance that it might help me is worthy of me supporting it, because if it helps someone else who goes through the hell that I experience, more power to them. And I don't think that anybody should want to take away something that benefits other people that's not hurting you. What does it matter? You know, I mean,
Very
but
libertarian of you.
yeah, that's a Rob's gonna love that. But it is what it is, right? And I feel like that's a pretty Democrat stance. I mean,
And I think that's right.
yeah.
I think that's right. Yeah, we would support that too. You know, when I speak to people that say the Republicans are always right, everything they say is right, I don't believe you're being honest. If you tell me that everything the Democrats say is right, and I'm going to support it, I don't think you're being honest, right? You don't have the country at the heart of what you're trying to get done. You're playing a sport. This is my team, and I'm going to go with my team, right? And that's terrible. If someone tells me they are all in on the Republicans or all in on the Democrats, I don't think you're being honest.
I agree with that 1,000%. Big influencers, it seems like they've all thrown in 100%, and I'm like, that's not real life, right? Like that's not. No. If you get so offended by a show on Netflix that you're telling the entire world to cancel their Netflix accounts, I'm like, you do realize that you don't have to watch that show.
Yeah, just turn it
right?
off. Right,
like,
power button.
Yeah, I mean, Stranger Things was my favorite show all the way up until their last season. They completely destroyed it, and for a lot of the reasons that Republicans say. But I wasn't going to miss that last season to find out. You know, like, that's my right. I have the freedom to do that.
Yeah, I've never understood the cancel culture, and the cancel culture, unfortunately, is a both sides thing, right? Like, don't watch it. Turn off the radio, turn off the TV, stop following that person on X. Like, why are you so offended that you have to force them to not do what they're doing? right? You're supposed to be open to different ideas. And I'll tell, and I would say this to your followers and any followers, if the only people you're following are those that think exactly like you, you're doing it wrong. You're doing it really wrong.
Well, I get accused of being a Trumper and all kinds of stuff. And I'm like, you don't know me very well if you think that I'm a Trumper. I was one of the first people, maybe one of the only people who was conservative in North Carolina to stand up and be like, I have a right to burn an American flag. I do. It's my country. I love my country. I would never burn an American flag, but that's my right. Because if I want to go buy a rainbow flag and burn it, you bet your ass I will. If I want to buy a Quran and burn it, I will. That's my right. That is my freedom of speech. And if I want to preserve my freedom of speech, that means sometimes I have to go, hey, this is their freedom of speech. And that needs to be protected because I don't want them to attack mine. So we've got to agree at some point, like, okay, I'm willing to support something I don't agree with to protect my freedoms.
There's no question. Freedom of speech is about protecting the speech of people that are saying things you can't stand. That's freedom of speech, not just about protecting the things you want to say, right? And I'll go back to, and I certainly don't want to make this discussion about Trump or Biden or anything like that, but I'll go back to what I said about Democrats and Republicans. If you think that everything your side is saying is right and everything the other side is saying is wrong, that's crazy. Whether you hate Trump, love Trump, there are things he's done that you can probably support. I know there's things that he's done that I can support. And if you can't, and I would say the same thing about Republicans and Biden, if you can't find something that they do hundreds of things every day, right? You're telling me there's nothing that they've done that you say, you know what, that was not a bad idea.
Yeah.
Right?
I agree with
You're
that
crazy.
too. I got very irritated when people would, bash Biden in certain situations because I was like, that might be an idiot, but that's my idiot. Okay, so let's pipe
He's your
down just a
president.
little bit, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's just how I felt about it. I mean, there were certain situations where it was like, look, like I'm not going to bash Biden and celebrate some dude from a different country. Like at least Biden's American. He was elected. Like so. I mean, I agree with you.
I hated when people said, yeah, he might be the president, but he's not my president. No, he's your president.
Yeah.
Trump is your president. Biden is your president.
Now, Cooper, on the other hand, I really do feel like Cooper did everything wrong, just so we're perfectly clear.
I can sense that you're not a Cooper fan.
I'm not.
I get it.
My mama died during COVID. I didn't get to, she basically raised me. I mean, especially during my younger years. I didn't get to see her for the last year. Right when I was finally going to get to go see her, with the partition, the glass partition, she got sick and she passed away. And she died alone. And then the more I started digging, the more I found out about NCOR, the more with what happened with Helene, there was just a whole slew of things. And so I just take it seriously personally because like I said, I'm a North Carolina girl. And when you start doing things that seriously impact the native North Carolinians, and these are what these things that Cooper did, that's who it impacted. So you're talking about people who've lived here for generations. Those are my people, and you hurt them and you let them down. And so, yeah, I have a personal vendetta against them.
Oh, I get it. And,
I don't hate Stein that bad, though.
no, I get it. And I'm sorry that you lost your grandmother.
Thank you.
So I'm going to leave it at that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. All right. Is there anything else you want to tell us before we wrap up?
About the Forward Party? Yeah. So I talked a lot about the incentives in politics, talked a lot about election reform, talked about education. I did want to hit on jobs and affordability because those are some of the things we talk a lot about. We talked about jobs, right? Nothing, or I won't say nothing. Very few things in life give people as much pride as doing a job they're proud of, right? So jobs are just hugely important, and jobs give people the chance to make a life they want. So I'm all for creating more, or when I say I'm, that's the wrong comment. The Forward Party is all for things to create jobs in North Carolina. And
I have a question about that. Because earlier we were talking about the transplant thing. North Carolina used to have a pretty strong economy, and it was very much based on, I wouldn't say strong, maybe that's the wrong word, but we kept ourselves afloat. And there was a lot of, there was the furniture here, there was, the paper mills, all these things. they got closed down and shipped overseas. I mean, that's what happened, right? And so then our tiny towns start to die, and then you start seeing things like, drug abuse and violence escalate, because that's what happens. And now it kind of feels like the native North Carolina population is being replaced, because the jobs that are coming in, these aren't jobs that are meant for middle class or lower middle class families. They're meant for people who have gone and gotten their 4-year degree, their master's, people who tend to be from up north, from out west. And then North Carolinians who want to survive ended up taking, the bottom of the barrel jobs. So my question is when you talk about the Ford Party supporting, bringing in jobs to the state of North Carolina, are we talking about jobs that benefit everyone? Or are we talking about the kind of jobs that you find, here in the triangle, the ones that benefit people who aren't from here? And I ask this question because both Republicans and Democrats will say, oh, we're going to bring in jobs and it's going to make everybody's life better. And then I see whose life it makes better, and that kind of, chaps my rear end. So.
I got it. So we could have an hour conversation on that whole topic. So what you're talking about is the impact of globalization.
Yeah.
And it hit North Carolina very hard, right? High Point and the furniture industry is not today what it was. And where globalization, and to be clear, I'm very supportive of globalization. I think tariffs that are currently being implemented are bad and hurting North Carolina and hurting the everyday American. But where globalization made mistakes is it didn't support those that were losing jobs. Right? So it didn't educate the people that were the furniture manufacturers to get them able to do a different type of job. We're going to face that going forward. So you can like AI, hate AI. AI is going to change the job market. And it's mostly going to impact what people traditionally call white collar jobs, right? If you're a lawyer, I would be very concerned that AI is going to take your job. If you're a coder, like creating software code, I would be very concerned that AI is going to take your job, right? So the job market's going to change, and we're going to have to adapt. I think where we've got tremendous opportunities in North Carolina is on a lot of things like HVAC, like some of the trades, HVAC, plumbing, electrical. If you bring in, people talk about data centers. Data centers are not going to be populated by white collar jobs. I mean, they're basically just buildings running servers. You're going to need HVAC, you're going to need plumbing. They have incredible water infrastructure to cool the systems. Those are the jobs that I think are going to be very strong that North Carolina can benefit from, right? I think we need to do a lot more training, and I think that's something, if I could write what a forward candidate would do, is really focus on Wake Tech, Durham Tech, those types of community college to stress more of the trades, because I think that would have helped Western North Carolina. If we grow and we build more housing, those trades are going to become more and more demand. Any type of new construction, any support of these massive data centers or warehouses. But the jobs of the future, none of us are smart enough to predict. We just need to know as they come, we need to support them.
Fair answer. I'm not sure I agree, but fair answer. All right, you said there were two things. What was the next one?
Affordability is a problem, right? And as strong believers in capitalism and free market, I think we need to deregulate some of the things that are preventing more affordable housing and preventing more affordable health care in North Carolina.
This I agree with.
See, there's a lot we can agree with. It's too hard to build affordable housing, right? There's too much not in my backyard going on. And my wife is opening a coffee shop in Raleigh. It's taken us over 1.5 years to get permits. Like that's crazy. So how do we take down some of the restrictions to building so you can build more homes? More homes, more supply means that pricing goes down, right?
More homes, I'm not sure I agree with. But during Hurricane Helene, when things were at their worst, right when winter hit, there was a lot of red tape. And people were living in hotel rooms, having to drive 2 hours to get to their job. There were people living in tents. I don't care what anybody tells you. There were definitely people who were living in tents. Just people in very bad situations. And exactly what you're talking about is what happened up there that made the situation worse.
Yeah, red tape doesn't, and as a country, we've gotten worse over time. Like we've dropped down, and I forgot the exact international polling, but they do the ease of doing business, and we've lost rankings over time, right? So we talked about, if you can't find something you agree with on the other, on a person that you might not fully support and everything, you're crazy. Trump did a great job of trying to deregulate things, right? Like he said, how do we get, for every new legislation I want to cut 2 or 10 or whatever it was, those are great ideas, right? So we need to deregulate some of that stuff. So affordability, we talked about housing, but another big part of that is healthcare. There's something called a certificate of need. Have you talked much about certificate of need?
I haven't.
Libertarians will love to dig into this. So if you wanted to build a new healthcare facility, right, for x-rays or MRIs, you have to prove there's a certificate of need, right? You have to go through all this red tape, say, we don't have enough out there, we need more x-ray facilities or MRI facilities. So the people in power, major hospital system, they're saying, no, we don't need any more, we've got it covered. So what does that do? It reduces competition. So if you can't build a new MRI facility or an urgent care facility, everything's got to flow through the major hospital. Then they dictate pricing. There's no competition. They own the hospital. They own all the out clinics. So a certificate of need makes it really difficult for new healthcare facilities to pop up. Why do we have that, right? Let's get rid of certificate of need on maybe not all of it, but on a significant scale, so that if someone wants to come up with a new MRI facility or a new urgent care facility, you can do those things to increase competition and drop price. Competition will drop price. More houses will drop the price of housing, right? More trades will allow us to respond to the tragedy of Helene and get more plumbers and electricians and HVAC experienced people out there to build the houses faster. I remember reading on Helene, we had trades coming in from outside of North Carolina because we didn't have enough North Carolinians. We're one of the fastest growing states. We should have gobs of that. So let's do more of that.
I agree with that. Well, most of it. I agree with most of it. This was awesome. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day.
I appreciate you taking your time to come meet us here in Raleigh.
History, let's talk about them hills. Let's talk about the gold might be waiting for me there. Let's talk about the dog.